we're not working any more ground today, although we do still have some dirt to turn over here south of Mattoon. We're cleaning up one of our messes we made the other night when we were running on the frozen ground. We're running the 9620R and the disc ripper back home to power wash out the outside wing disc gangs on the back. If you recall, they were frozen solid and they wouldn't spin. Now they're packed full of a ton of dirt, mud, and possibly a screwdriver up in that one. We do get another opportunity to run here this week, namely in this area. We'll have functioning disc gangs and we can actually put the ripper in the ground. All of this loose dirt you see fell off on its own while this is sat here over the weekend. That's quite a bit of dirt, and we did not take a screwdriver to it, a hammer, or anything. It just fell off. Normally you wouldn't want to do that on the rock, but don't have much say. There's not a ton of parking space here. Let's see if we can get this out of here without making any more of a mess than we already have. I got the same exact error the other night when I moved this 9620R from our home site over here to this farm. Park brake pressure very high, solenoid supply fault. Let's give it a shot. Nope, okay, never mind. Try cycling the power, I guess. It's always something. Didn't freak out. Let's try to go, I guess. Dad looked at me this morning and said, hey, you know what, Andy? It's Monday morning. Why don't we back the big tractor and ripper out of the driveway so we don't tear up the yard? I said, sure, boss. Sounds like a fantastic idea. Not at all, actually. This is terrible. That's why they pay me the big bucks. Hello, travelers. Look at that. There's my grandpa's outfit working around. Working up nice. There is a trash truck way down yonder, parked sideways in the road. Either he's waiting on something, broke down, or this is a setup to rob us of our 6,000 receiver. They're not gonna pull the wool over my eyes. I've seen this movie before. I'm gonna wait and see what the trash truck does because I actually legitimately cannot get around on either side. We have a lane right here. I've got my buddy going to check that works up the road here. If it's blocked off, I'm just going to cut left and go through our farm.
They're broke down. He's going to try to get this. This truck is going to try to pull him.
Oh, no, I can cut left here. I'm sitting here. I was waiting to see. That's what I needed to know, though. I appreciate it. That's why I stopped a mile to the south. Gotta take a little detour. Nothing quite like taking the scenic route on a Monday. Just right south of the farm. That's exactly why this lane was put in here, to get around trash trucks that are broke down in the middle of the road. Well, if you had being rerouted by a broke down garbage truck on your bingo card for the day, make sure you cross that one off. Did not take too long with the pressure washer and a spade to dig that out. That it wasn't frozen today, unlike the other morning when I was trying to do it with a screwdriver. Speaking of my tool, it did not make it home from the battlefield. It is in fact a part of that farm now. May never see it again, or 20 or 30 years from now it may make an appearance in a tire. You never really know. There's not really a middle ground with losing tools. I still find things out in our fields that are probably 60 or 70 years old. Got this unplugged, working on the other side right now. Somewhat of a messy job, but should be no problem. Not really a great sign for the year when you're power washing something you're not even done with it. Good as new. Looks like our stop. They made it real easy to do. The old government juice that turns the exhaust into unicorn farts. Just barely have enough hose. And that's where she'll rest till the ground freezes or dries up. Or we just give up on the hope of working the rest of our ground. Another rainy morning. What a common sight this has been for the last 3 months. There's just a shade over 0.2 of an inch of rain in the gauge. That's a hair over 5 millimeters, closer to 6 millimeters for you Europeans. If we'd gotten this kind of rain in the heart of summer, let's say late July, it'd be dried up by noon. But we're far from that. It's December 1st, it's cold, it's chilly, it's damp outside. This may put us out of the field for another week. We were just getting close enough, I mean tomorrow type close, to working our last field. And now, we'd be lucky to get it done this week, if not next week. Seems like every time we get close, Mother Nature's like, oh, gotta be quicker than that. That's the tail end of 2021 in a nutshell for you. I might as well be somewhat productive today. I need to pull some yield data off of one of these 2630 displays that was in the S670 combine. I guess it's not here right now. It's in at John Deere getting its midwinter service. Check it over, make sure everything's good under the hood, under the gull wing doors. There's a lot of belts and parts that can go bad. Normally I would do this before these screens are pulled out of the combine, but my dad is like a little helper elf. If you're not fast enough, he'll pull these things off before you're even leaving the field. So I'm gonna hop into one of these 9460Rs to get some power. That's on my winter project list. Put some LEDs in here so we can see when it's dark. It doesn't matter what tractor you put it in because all we need is power to this to get the data off. After running that 780 with the 4600 display, I wish we had that in all of our equipment. These 2630s were nice when they came out, but once you run that new tech, you realize the old stuff just isn't quite as good. Didn't get it right the first try. There we go. Export data. I pulled this data earlier to get some information on one field, but we had a few cool trials, specifically with fungicide and a few other additive products. Those will be what we're measuring off this screen. Something on that side of the barn is already slated to leave this off season. Is it a combine? Is it a tractor? Is it a grain cart? Is it a planter? Or is it all of it? Could quite possibly be all of it if we get like $30 corn. We're done. Very exciting stuff. It's like Mission Impossible. Totally. As I'm sure some of you probably could have guessed, as winter approaches, videos are going to slow down. 1, for my sanity. 2, for a lack of content, or at least exciting content, because eventually I'll just spend all day in a backhoe or a semi truck, and I don't think you want to watch that for 20 minutes every couple days. Within the last few weeks though, I've started posting every new video on my Instagram story, so make sure you're following me there, aTrippyFarmer, if you don't want to miss it on YouTube. Just a quick disclaimer before we walk into the house. I am what many people would refer to as a geek, but I'm a farm geek, so bear with me, don't judge. This right here, folks, is where the magic happens. From video editing to random stuff, farm stuff, data, gaming, whatever you can imagine, I do it here. Except for sleep. And sometimes when the video takes a long time, I do in fact sleep right here while it renders. Here's our data. Let's dive into it. One of the most beneficial things that you can do for the future of your farm is to continuously strive to innovate, try new products and new things to improve your agronomics, your financials, and even your impact on the environment. That being said, we do that on a handful of farms every year. I am personally a very big believer in data, and as much as I'd like to trust our very reliable companies that sell us products, it's usually best to see the data for yourself. For everyone who continuously asks where we're located at, we are right here in South Central Illinois, about 3 hours south of Chicago, 45 minutes south of Champaign on I-57. A neat side note, this is tile country. You can see the farms where subsurface drainage has been put in heavily. It's very evident in some of these maps. These locations are going to dry quicker. You're going to be able to plant them earlier. They're not going to stay saturated during the growing season, which typically results in higher yields. That being said, we're going to take a look at this farm right here. It's soybeans, Pioneer 31T64E, a 3-1 enlist soybean. When you analyze a data set such as this one, whether you're trying out a new product, new seed, whatever, it is very important to recognize your biases, flaws within the data set, and of course problems within the field that can skew the data overall. I was extremely excited on this farm to try 2 different products on these soybeans, one of them being a seed treatment, which is a Levo, and the other one being a Corteva licensed biological nitrogen fixating product that was applied. Let's dive into the data. Obviously you're going to see real quick, there's a lot of red in this area, this area, this area, and here. Very important to recognize, these are the 2 new terraces we built on this farm this off season. This is where the water runs through. We also ran a tile there. We also have a wash through here and a pond right here. It's important to recognize that because this is going to skew your data in some regard. There was next to no crop right here. Even with these problems present, the field performed on par with most of the farms in the area, averaged a hair over 76 bushels an acre, which is satisfactory. This is fantastic farm ground, but it's one of those years where your great rich soil doesn't perform as good as your light because there's just too much water. Let's start with the seed treatment trials. On about 75% of this field, the planter was split left and right, one side being the standard full spectrum Pioneer treatment, the other side being the same with the addition of a Levo. A Levo is a premium additive to seed treatments to help reduce late season SDS pressure. It is a relatively expensive addition to your seed treatment plan, so something we wanted to see on our farm. Let's dive into the data. Across the entirety of this farm, the Levo, according to the combine yield monitors, actually yielded roughly 2 bushels an acre worse than just the standard treatment. It is important to recognize, though, that the Levo area does include this part right here. This alone is enough to skew the data set pretty significantly just because that's 13 or 14 acres negatively affected by the installation of the new terraces. So you have to take this all with a grain of salt. To draw a relatively fair comparison, I do like to look at the data in areas that does not have a lot of external factors causing damage. So I'm going to draw a box right here. We're going to look and see what exactly the difference is. Much to my surprise, even in this area of the field, we still have a roughly 2 bushel advantage to the non-Levo soybeans, which is impressive because the Levo is a double-digit seed treatment. It's going to cost you probably $15, give or take a little bit, depending on how much you're using and what your price is. We'll give it one more shake here on the other side of the hill. The reason I'm maintaining this right screen is because I want to make sure that I'm not pulling data from a non-treated area. If I got out here, the data is going to look a little bit off. In this smaller section, the Levo is a little bit closer, maybe a half bushel off, but still not conclusive evidence to make you want to use this product. However, to be completely fair, if the year had turned out dry at the end, you typically see more SDS pressure. It didn't happen this year, but very likely next year we could have the exact opposite outcome. The results from this trial aren't going to encourage us to use a Levo next year. I'm not saying that it doesn't have a place, especially in areas with high SDS pressure. It just didn't work for us, and we didn't see the risk to reward being there, adding nearly a bushel to pay for this product, and we were actually losing yield in some instances. The lost yield is probably due to a Levo's effect on seedlings. It is hard on them, and it is partially a reason why people refrain from using this product and use other alternatives. I know that some of you are very fascinated by soil types and their effect on yield, so I went ahead and overlaid the soil map on top of the yield map. You can clearly see the areas with the Rob silt loam did the best, especially compared to the areas with the Drummer silty clay loam, which is typically a highly productive soil. It is partially due to the properties of the soil type, but it is more so the result of these soils being formed in lower lying areas, which is just not a good area to be a soybean this year. Too much water. Higher areas were very high yielding. As you can see in the yield map, and I have calibrated this, we had a few areas that stayed 80 to 90 pretty consistently, and even some 100s. One last thing to look at on this field, and that is the biological trial. The way this was split up, we did 2 applications. One was applied with our herbicide, the last one was applied with our fungicide, and we had an untreated check in the middle. The one with the herbicide was roughly in here, and the one with the fungicide was roughly in here, 20 acres each, and in the middle there would have been an untreated check of an unknown size. I can tell you without even looking at the data that the results are going to be pretty muddy at best. just for the fact that there was a trial area right here, and the area next to it that was untreated did phenomenal. I'm not even going to dive into the yield data on this one. I think that these products are very promising. A field like this just goes to show you, though, Mother Nature is the ultimate difference maker on what happens. I don't think that product brought our yield down over here. More so, I think that the water getting off of this area and exiting out through this northwest corner made the biggest difference in yield, whereas we had a lot more ponding in this area. There's nothing we can do about that, and we're certainly going to look into using more of these biologicals in the future, especially on our corn acres, which is something we did not get to try this year. Here's some useless information. The last two raw for the hydrostat on that S780 that went out was right here in the corner. Dad was cutting. He zipped over this way at road gear, and right in here somewhere, it quit moving. And the combine sat right here for 3 or 4 days before it got towed out. Very important stuff. We are now at a field southwest of Lakeland College where we had some fungicide trials. Can anyone tell me where the wet areas of this field are and which direction the water runs? This elevation map right here might give you some hints. Water starts in the northeast corner, makes its way south. Same with this side of the farm, northeast corner makes its way south. I'm sure you can guess these areas are going to be yielding much worse. Let's look at the data. I'm not quite sure why we get all this artifacting along the edge where the combines stop and start recording data. It's not pretty, but I haven't found a way around it. We have a couple trials out here, one being Syngenta's TrivaPro versus BASF's Veltima, and another being 2 passes of Syngenta's TrivaPro versus 1 pass. I was thumbing through my layer options, and I got distracted by the corn seeding population versus the harvest yield. Now this is something that I find relatively interesting because corn population, and soybean population for that matter, are a very, very interesting point of contention. Everyone has differing opinions on what does better, and it is going to depend on the year. I captured what I think is an extremely fair and balanced area, not a lot of damage in any specific location. All of this is kind of in the 34 to 35,000 plants per acre range, and all of this dark green below is in that 35,000-ish plants per acre range. So I picked up 500 to 1,000 plants per acre, and it had a noticeable impact on yield. The most shocking thing is how much yield was gained by adding population. Even in the same section of the field, an area with 3, 4, or 500 plants per acre less was yielding 8 or 9 bushels below the slightly higher ones. You see an even larger jump when you push the population a little higher. There is nearly a 15 bushel per acre advantage of the 35,000 plus plants per acre area versus the low 34,000s. 15 bushels in a year like this, $6 corn, is $90 an acre. 1,000 extra seeds of corn might be $3 or $4 an acre more in seed cost, shooting from the hip there. So, a very clear advantage on adding population to your corn. Okay, let's focus on what we came here to do, and that was look at our fungicide applications. Like I mentioned earlier, the entire field was sprayed with TrivaPro, Syngenta's fungicide, at about VT, a little bit after, with an airplane. With the exception of this area right here in the bottom corner where we applied BASF's Veltima to get a little bit of a side-by-side. Here's the application map from the airplane just so we can kind of get an idea of where the Veltima was applied. This is important because we kind of want to see where the cutoff is for the product. I left the elevation map over the top because I want you to keep this in mind when we look at the yield data and remember how wet this year was. That has a massive effect on yields. I think overlaying the elevation map was a little bit too much for Mother Deer to handle here on the computer side. I'd say the Veltima was applied roughly in this area. We take the inrows out because they're just not good yield data. It appears to me that Veltima had a few very healthy chunks of the field. Now it is neck and neck because TrivaPro also had some very healthy chunks on this side out here, but overall, this product had maybe the highest yielding area right here. Veltima is a viable fungicide and it does provide for a longer application window, something that I think is worth looking at, especially if you're using a ground rig. Now we have the courtesy of emptying our wallets to pay a big yellow plane to come spray our fields, so we're a little bit more flexible, although this year was kind of a zoo. Just for fun, we'll take a look at this area, see what it yielded. We may have overstayed our welcome. Deer's kind of struggling right now to process even this small chunk. The yields are just too high. Looks like we have 1.6 acres here that yielded 258.07 bushels per acre versus the field average of 233. we'll go and compare it to maybe this section right here, which I believe is probably where the cutoff is. And we have 257. So almost neck and neck when the areas were similar. Speaking of overlapping, we did the 2-pass trial of Syngenta's Triva Pro here on the south end of the west side of the ditch. And the results look very uneventful because the 2-pass here yielded worse than some of the 1-passes on the east side of the field. 230 bushels per acre versus a whole field average of 233. Not much to see there, although I have heard around the countryside that there was a 15 bushel bump for 2-pass fungicide and about a 10 bushel bump on average for 1-pass. I don't think that this is definitive by any means. It just shows you how variable a farm can be, especially in a wet year. If anything should be proven to you, it is how much money and how good of a return on investment field tile is. Because I'm sure areas out here that are tiled perform much better than areas that aren't. Alrighty everyone, that is going to conclude our research and development for the day. I really enjoy looking at this data and trying to compare new products in the agriculture industry. If any of you viewing has something you'd like me to try next year, get a hold of me at my email. I'd love to see it, not just for the sake of the YouTube channel, but I want to do things on our farm that benefit our bottom line. Speaking of great things to try, for those of you who are interested in trying out some CBD in the form of a pouch, head over to CanadipCBD.com right now and use code TRIPPY, T-R-I-P-P-Y at checkout to get 50% off of the holiday box. I've talked about Canadips and CBD on the channel multiple times. For those of you who are unfamiliar, CBD has been shown to reduce anxiety, combat insomnia, and combat chronic pains. It's also a fantastic alternative to traditional chewing tobacco. It comes in great flavors, and like I said, you can get 50% off if you use code TRIPPY at checkout. I'll drop a link down below and on the video. Go check out the video sponsor. It's a great deal. That being said, I'm going to pull the plug on this video. I appreciate you all tuning in. Like the video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you want to see more. And comment down below if you have any questions. You know I love to talk about farming. Have a great day, everyone. Peace!